Hello and welcome to this tutorial on how to solve an equation. The key thing to notice to start with is that you're actually trying to find out what the value of x is to make that equation work. So we need to understand what the equation actually means. So what this means is that 7 times something add 4 equals 18. Now in order to solve that we work backwards. So the first thing we do is get rid of this add 4, and the opposite of adding 4 is to take 4 off. So we're going to take away 4 from both sides. So you end up with, on this side you're left with the 7x, and that's going to equal 18 take away 4 is 14. We're now left with 7 lots of something equals 14. To work out one lot of it, we're going to divide that by the 7. Okay, so on the left hand side you're left with x, and on the right hand side you're left with 2. X equals 2. Let's just check that works. 7 times 2 is 14, add 4 gives me the 18. Excellent. Here's a second example for us to try. So this time it means 5 times something, take away 3 equals 14. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of that take away 3, and the opposite of take away 3 is to add 3. So I'm going to add 3 to both sides. So on the left hand side now I'm left with just the 5x, and that equals, on this side, 14 add 3 is 17. And again, to get the x on its own here, I'm going to divide it by 5, and I'm going to divide this side by 5. So I'm left with x equals, now 17 divided by 5 is not going to be a nice number. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave it as a fraction. It's much easier that way, and it's a much more precise answer. Okay, so 4 questions are going to appear now. Pause the video and have a go at these questions yourself, okay? Okay, so if we go through these, of course, we take the 5 off first. So you end up with 3x equals 12, and then you divide by the 3, so you end up with x equals 4. Okay, this one, the first thing to get rid of is just take away 7, so we're going to add 7 on to both sides, so we end up with 9x's equals 18. Then we divide both sides by 9, so you're left with x equals 2. Question 3 here. So got 4x add 2 equals 7. So the first thing we do is take away the 2 from both sides. So we end up with 4x equals 5. And now I'm going to divide both sides by 4. And again, this isn't going to work out to be a nice integer number, so I'm going to leave it as a fraction as 5 over 4. And our final one, again the first step is to add the 8 on to both sides. Do the opposite again. So you end up with 7x equals 17. Then I'm going to divide both sides by the 7. Again, this doesn't work out nicely, so I'm going to leave it as a fraction. Excellent. Okay, now we've got the hang of the simple ones. These are called two-step equations because there's 2 things to do. We're going to look at some more complex ones, but at all times we're going to try and make it look like one of these equations because we now know how to solve those equations. Okay, so this is an equation where we've got x's on both sides. Now that's the big change. We've got x's on both sides of the equal sign, and that means that it's going to be a little bit trickier to solve. But what we don't want is, we want x's on one side really, and we want the number bit on the other side. So the first thing I'm going to do is look at this and go, I've got 7x's here, so I'm going to take all those 7x's off. But in order to keep this balanced, I've got to take 7x's off there as well. So on this side you're left with 2x's, add 4 equals, well those x's have vanished, and that equals 20. Now we've got an equation like we had before that we can now solve. So we're going to take the 4 off both sides again. So you end up with 2x equals 16. So 1x must equal 8. Excellent. Our second example is where we've got a bracket involved. Now, the first thing I look at is when I see the bracket, I'm going to expand that bracket. So I'm just going to do it underneath. I always draw the grid. Other people do it different ways, but I always draw the grid out to expand the bracket. So 7 times 3x is 21 lots of x. 7 times 2 is 14. There's an add here, so it'll be an add in there. So my equation now becomes 21x add 14 equals 56. Ah, brilliant. This now looks like one of the equations we know how to solve. So we're going to take 14 off first. So we're left with 21x on this side equals 56 take away 14 is 42. And then we're going to divide by 21. And how many times does 21 go into 42? Well, the answer to that is 2, dead on. Excellent. So again, we're going to now have questions 5, 6 and 7 appear. Pause the video, have a go yourselves, and then I'll work through it with you. Okay? Okay, so let's work through the first one. We've got x's on both sides. I don't want that, so let's get rid of these 5 x's from this side because that's the least amount of x's. So get rid of that from both sides. You end up with 2 x's add 4 equals, well they've vanished, 10. Then we take the 4 off both sides, so we get 2 x's equals 6. Then we divide by 2, so x in this case will equal 3. Excellent. Hope we all got that one right. Next one. Okay, again, x on both sides, don't want that. Less x's on this side, so let's get rid of those 5 x's. Okay, remember to do it to both sides. So you end up with 4x minus 2 equals, the x's here have vanished, so you've got 12 left. Now we add the 2 on because that's the opposite of take away. So you end up with 4 x's on the left equals 12 add 2 is 14. So we're now going to divide by that 4. It's not going to be a particularly nice number, so I'm going to leave it as a fraction, 14 over 4, and just because I can, I'm going to divide both numbers by 2 and simplify that fraction to 7 over 2. Excellent. And our last question, we've got a bracket involved. So the first thing we do is I always draw the grid out to expand that bracket. Okay, so we've got 5 times 3x is 15 lots of x. 5 times 2 becomes 10. So my new equation is 15x add 10 equals 70. Just from here, the 70. So my next step is then to take away the 10 because that's the opposite of adding 10. So you've got 15 lots of x equals 60. So I'm now going to work out how many times that 15 goes into 60. Well, if we count up 15, 30, 45, 60, that's 4 times. So x in that case must be 4. Alright, so when you go to your next lesson, please make sure that you've had a go at these questions and you're mentioning to your teacher any issues you may have had or any questions that you don't quite understand how to do them. Alright, excellent. Bye everyone.